Abhijeet, and I'm here in my personal capacity here. As Devesh mentioned, I work for one of the customers of SAP, and I work as an enterprise architect. So today we have been having sessions where there was a lot of information being shared, and I'm sure it was quite informative, but I'm sure it was also quite heavy. So I'll try to keep it simple, and hopefully you will take away something valuable from this. The intent is to give you some food for thought and maybe something to worry about. Hopefully, something valuable as well. Right. So let's start with something very basic. Why enterprise go to cloud? Right. When we started, at least when I started my career many years ago, everybody used to have their own SAP instance sitting somewhere down in the basement, and it was all perfectly fine. You had MPLS lines, and they were able to connect to the different assets, offices, and it was all fine. But then, over time, organizations have gone cloud. Why? Simple thing, responsibility shift. Right? People have realized, enterprises have realized that I would rather focus on business requirements and let the mundane be taken care of for me. Right? So as simple as that. SaaS push, right? We see that in last so many years, particularly last one decade, things have been made available on SaaS a lot more than it has been made available on premise. So logically, it made more sense to go and adopt for those solutions. Speed. The rate at which you get things, new innovations on cloud versus on premise is just phenomenal. You just look at ECC. The EHPs used to come in years, versus on cloud you get the updates quarterly, right? So in fact, it is other way around. People actually find it difficult to adopt it at that rate, right? And we'll touch upon that a bit later. And best tech. Basically, you get everything which is new on the cloud a lot quicker, and the best things are typically available only in cloud and not elsewhere. So that is the reason why enterprises have typically gone for cloud. But you have an iceberg of cloud. What you see is the pitch given to us, and the slides were made even before I knew the full agenda in which it was going to start with pitch, so it's just a serendipity. But the pitch that we get for cloud is that you have unlimited choice, you have infinite scaling, you have uncapped innovation, unleash. In some companies are very good at unleashing. Then you have universal access, instant value, everything good. But what you don't see when you have all of that is the reality, which is you have data stored. What that means is your data is sitting not just in one place, but in several places. Right? Technologies. So earlier you had SAP taking care of the whole of the ERP. Right? The app was doing everything. You had a web consultant, basis consultant, that's it. From a technology perspective, it was fine. Today you need people from probably 20, 25 different technologies to make it work, because every cloud has every provider has its own way of delivering things. Cost, right? So cloud was sold as a solution which was going to make your things cheaper. I don't think many people will agree that that has happened. Risks. The vulnerability has increased a lot, not because people have been careless, simply because it's just too many things to manage, right? And as we'll see later on, it's not easy as well. Poor observability contributes to the such risks of security and lags, right? So when we know all of these, or at least when we see these pictures, we have to think, why enterprise go multi-cloud? When you know that there are some good things, but then there are also a lot of problems you don't see, right? People or enterprises go multi-cloud primarily because of the TINA factor. There is simply no alternative, right? One provider doesn't have everything that you need, so you are forced to go to another cloud to get that particular feature. Example would be, say, BTP, because it's an SAP crown. SAP has AWS first policy when it comes to BTP services and solutions. First thing it will be delivered is AWS. But if your organization has an IBM Cloud or GCP or Azure as first as the policy, you want to adopt that BTP service because that is really adding value, you don't have a choice. You have to go beyond your existing Azure-centric setup to AWS as well, and maybe something else. Regulatory requirement force you as well. So there are some geographies, countries which mandate that you must have your compute or at least part of your data sitting in a certain location. So you might be a US centric company, but you operate in European geography, so you have to have something here. The provider doesn't operate here, so you have to get another cloud to get your workload. Right? And then acquisitions. If I do the reverse, say you are an European company and you're expanding to American market, and you just get all of the baggage which comes with acquisition. So they might have a different setup itself. They might be GCP centric, while you are, say, hosting on little-based platforms. Right? So you have no choice. You just have to adopt, accept what it comes. But then there are choices as well, wherein you decide as an organization that, you know what, I don't want to have all of my critical load sitting on something which may break just because somebody pulled the plug. There was a flood, there was a fire. It happens a lot more nowadays than 20 years ago, right? So you want to make sure that your critical businesses just don't come to a crashing halt. And that's why you choose to put critical stuff on different places. And then sometimes it is business mandate that you must build your processes in such a manner that they go via all of these things, checks and balances, etc. Governance, or rather lack of. Right? So there are organizations where the EA practice is not very mature. We just saw some examples. As a result, you have a situation where people just accept the solution without realizing the technical details. And that's why you have a proliferation of things which you didn't know are so complex. Right. So does multi-cloud feel like this when I've explained it to you? If that does, then probably it's time to have a bit more conversation. So we saw why, and now we'll have a look of what makes it even more harder when you look a bit more into details. Heterogeneity. Right? So every cloud provider has its own unique conventions, toolings, governance models. It becomes extremely painful to observe and to even troubleshoot. Right? You have to have, if I look at operations, you need to have specialized teams to have that knowledge and experience to manage all of that unique and interesting technologies which we have in the landscape. SLAs are different, time zones are different because they are operating in different regions. And first of all, we were looking at that little diagram here in which there was a circle saying you can plug and play. That is not something which happens that easily because as simple as there are different maintenance schedules. So you may have a policy in which on a second Thursday or second Saturday of the month is when I will have a maintenance window of my on-premise. But that SaaS solution might have second Tuesday or fourth Wednesday. And you will have continuous outages which you have to monitor and so on and so forth. So the complexities keep on increasing as and when you increase more and more components with different providers. Security is and was always hard, right? And what makes it even worse is the variable regulatory and compliance needs. You also have higher exposure when you have different services sitting in different places. You have identity fragmentation. Just look at BTP identity provider. The reason why IIS had to be brought was because there were so many various different ways in which people were integrating their authentication mechanism. So they needed something which makes it simple, right? So additional component. Pricing. I think it was not discussed here a lot, but the pricing metrics differ for similar kind of service per cloud. So sometimes you have user-based, sometimes you have usage-based, sometimes compute-based for the similar kind of service, right? And that makes it even more harder to make sense of whether this is cheaper or that is cheaper. Should I keep running stuff here, not here? So if I can zoom into things, I would rather bring your focus on three pressing concerns. The first one is data sovereignty. One line response is, it's a nightmare, right? And we probably do not realize it already, and it will become a big problem in coming days, simply because data localization is getting the backing of law, which can be contradictory. For example, if you're a European company, GDPR governs you, meaning you must keep personal sensitive data here, compute should be here, nobody except the European governance and regulations can touch you. But then you have US Cloud Act, which says, if you are an AWS customer, doesn't matter. I can see, if I want to, what is sitting in your data, what's sitting in your compute, right? So that is that's a minefield that you have to navigate. So when you decide on your multi-cloud strategy, they are as simple as that, or storage or applications. You have to be careful that you don't pick up a cloud just because it is nice and fancy, but is it really matching with these very, very dense things? And if you get into legal cognition, it can get very, very difficult very quickly. The next one is operational technology in cloud. At least when I started career, operational technology was SCADA systems and PLCs which were sitting in an air-gapped network somewhere in the asset, which was a few hundred kilometers away from the nearest railhead, right? Today, that is not the case. Not only that SCADA system is connected to the network of the organization, but also the OT providers are making it available on their own proprietary cloud solutions, right? Is that good? Yes, it gives you a lot of information handy and ready-made. But then that's another attack surface that you have, another complexity that you have to manage, another team. So all of what you saw on that cloud slide comes into play. Problem is, it's OT. So if that gets infected, that gets in wrong hands, you have a bigger problem. So you have to be careful when you are bringing those OT cloud access-based solutions. Innovation rate, right? So we have seen a lot of innovative products in the last 6-7 years that we have been. The rate at which things are being made available to us as organizations is unprecedented. And it's good when you want to adopt that new thing. But the problem is sometimes by the time you assess, evaluate, operationalize, and even get to the point where you can benefit from it, the technology has changed. I'll give you an example. BTP workflow service. When it was introduced on SAP Neo. It was a very good service, and you did not need to build all those clunky SWDD-based workflows. I built them. It was not very nice. So it was very nice to go and build those things there. But then came, oh, we don't want it on Neo. We will give you on CF. It's good. Cloud Foundry is better. You have newer stuff. And people started migrating. So you have a Neo Cloud, which is SAP managed, to Cloud Foundry, which is hyperscaler based. By the time you moved here and operationalized it, came the SAP build automation, build process automation. And that was a completely different solution. Always upgrade, but that was a new solution. And it was only available in AWS and not everywhere else. So if you adopted Neo first, which was sitting in Europe somewhere, and then you were forced to go for something else, and then you were again forced, you can imagine the amount of change that you have to go through. And these solutions are not necessarily easy to migrate. So the amount of effort that you need to do for moving these solutions, operationalizing them is not easy. Right? So yes, innovation is good, but we have to be careful that it is done properly. So I've spent a lot of time in complaining. Let me try to see how I can address in this situation. If we can fix the problem even before it happens, that is better. So if we can ask these critical questions before even we go into that space, that would be ideal. Is it required? Right? Is the complexity that we are going into, is it required? Right? We should try to avoid it at that stage itself. So we should ask the question, do we really need that complicated process? Do we really need all of those things in that process to make it work? Right? is it desirable? Do we really need the solutions which are very complicated to build? Because a good solution, the simplest solutions are always the easiest to build, maintain, run, and replace. I just said, right? You had to replace so many times. So if you have a solution which is using limited number of technologies, preferably sitting in one place, that is always better than going all out. Right? And that's sustainable. Every additional piece of hardware, software, service, technology that you add is going to cost you, is going to add complexity into your network. Right. So what are the recommendations if you already have the problem in hand? Right? So it was okay if you didn't have, but what if you already have? Tools. So we heard from this team about the integrated tool chain. I think that's really valuable. And as a Linux administrator in my organization, I can confirm with a lot of conviction that it does happen. Right? So first of all, it provides you that visibility of what you have in the landscape. What does it do? Which capability it addresses? If I have to replace, are there already 3 solutions or 4 solutions in the landscape? And that avoids you to procure more things without knowing. Right? Same for observability. If you don't know what you have, and it is very hard to troubleshoot. Standards. Right? So please make sure that you don't just look at the architecture center where I have contributed recently, but also implement them with a lot of rigor. It really helps. As an EA, we must make sure that fit for purpose reference architectures are built, and not just for integrations where they are most used, but also for UX, also for automation, etc., etc. But above all, you need to have good governance, right? And the operator word is enforce good governance. If you don't have good governance on the tools and standards that you have, you will not have every benefit that you're looking for. So you need good sponsorship from your organization's leadership. You need the governance not only on technology but on the cost and security IT and OT space both. Right? To summarize, multi-cloud is a norm. While I've complained, I've said that try to avoid, but it might be a necessity simply because there are too many things there and you cannot avoid choosing them for business, for having business value. But you have to be careful about the trends like data sovereignty and OT data. From a security perspective, from the perspective of making your business safe from disruptions. Try to challenge complexity and demand simplicity in your processes, in your technology landscape. Invest in tools, and it's not just Excel. Excel is not a tool, it's just a problem. So Excel, invest in right tools, not just the integrated tool chain that we saw. I would highly recommend, and as like I said, Linux is really good. Signavio is good, but beyond that also for observability, for finding the cost management, please invest in them. That really helps, and especially when you have to replace things, that's really most helpful then. And having standards is not sufficient, you need governance. I'll leave you that. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Yeah. Any questions here?
On your 3-step set of questions about challenging complexity. So, where's the difference between 1 and 2? Is it required? And number 2 was
Desirable.
desirable.
Yeah, so required is more of, it's like, I want this, is desirable, and we must have this. So it's more of wish versus demand. That's the difference.
And would it be a sequence? So first you ask required, if required, also desirable?
Yeah, you can say that. I mean, the idea is that don't fall for the hype. That's what I would say. You should go for a technology only when it is actually bringing value, and not just because he's doing it. Right? That's the idea. These are the questions that we must ask. Saying, is this solving the business problem? If not, then I would probably just look at it and say thank you.
That that sounded a little bit pessimistic. Is that how you feel?
I look at it from a perspective that the EAs are the harbinger of bad news. So, so it's okay if I give the bad news to people saying, no, you should not do this. Because the thing is, it's like the war. It's very good. It's very easy to go into it, but it's very difficult to come out of it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very easy to go and make that decision of procuring something, but then when it comes to wiring it with everything else, or at a certain point in time removing, look at ECC. The statistics of moving away from ECC to S4 are so miserable, right? It's not because S4 is a bad technology. It's just that it's very hard to move because people think, oh no, it's working, why do I want to touch it? So when you invest in something, please make sure that you invest it for the right reasons, and you should go for the right technology. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but go in for the right reasons.
So I think going to what Ajit was saying, there is a sense of generating FOMO by the
Yes,
developers
absolutely, yeah.
within the customers. So we should not be hyped by FOMO. I mean, don't think that we are missing out something. There are many things which first stabilize and then move forward.
Yeah, I mean, you should look at new technologies. It is not that, because sometimes it is actually solving the problem. So you must look at it, but it doesn't mean that you must adopt it yesterday. It should be looked at.
You stressed that the standards and tools should be enforced. The challenge with that is that the more we architects enforce whatever, the more we come across as policemen. So how do you harmonize with enforcement, and on the other hand we're here to help and we're friends of business?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very tough road to walk on, and usually, I think I was hearing somebody saying that once you come out of those heated discussions, that's what happens. Right? But somebody has to go and say that if you don't do this properly, you may have a lot bigger problem to solve a year or 2 or 3 down the line than what you have today. So sometimes it's just that you have to enforce while being the bad guy. Sometimes you may try to enforce, but you may get shut down saying, no, I'm going to do it. And then maybe somebody down the line realizes, somebody at that point of time said, I told you so.
And that's why DA policing is required. Like whenever any change is getting approved for implementation, it needs to be approved by the DA governance. Then it is enforcing. Without them passing that gate, you can't go ahead.
No,
and their help is needed from CIO, CTO, and CEO.
Okay, great. That's what I said, that you need to have the business sponsorship,
Yeah.
And only then you should go for enforcing them. Otherwise, nobody listens.
Yeah.
You may have some ivory tower based discussion. We saw the architect elevator at the beginning, so you may have that, oh, I want to do like this, but then if there is no sponsorship, it doesn't go right.